Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football late Thursday night. Some massive news for the Nebraska Cornhusker fans coming out of the recruiting trail as three-star offensive lineman Brian Tapu committing to this Nebraska program. And for the Nebraska fans that have been rocking with the fellas the last couple of weeks and months, you guys know how I'm going to start this one out. This is another Matt Rhule kind of prospect from the high school level in terms of the physical traits just all being there for this kid. You look at the potential for Brian Tapu at the Big Ten level and say, the sky's the limit. Now, is he the most polished offensive lineman at the high school level? Certainly not, but all the athletic traits are there, and that is exactly in line in terms of how Matt Rhule wants to go about building this Nebraska program. We say it all the time. Give me the guys with the elite physical traits. We'll teach them how to be very good football players. Brian Tapu is one of those guys, a massive commitment for Nebraska on the offensive line. The first offensive lineman committed in the 2025 cycle. I expect there to be at least a couple more offensive linemen committing to Nebraska over the next couple of months. Fired up to get into the film. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Nebraska fans. You guys know I love talking this program, especially when it comes to the recruiting trail. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Brian Tapu. And again, the first thing that stands out is when we evaluate a lot of offensive linemen coming from the high school ranks that have the size that Brian Tapu does, they normally just win with mass, right? They're not necessarily functional athletes. They're not getting off the line of scrimmage very effectively. You look at Brian Tapu and say, yeah, the hand usage, some of the footwork, that certainly needs to get cleaned up. You are looking at a 6'7", 300-pound offensive lineman that fires off the football, works to the second level exceptionally well. There's not a lot of things from an athletic standpoint that Nebraska will ask him to do that he's not capable of. And I think that's what excites you the most is you're getting not only a big body on the offensive line, you're getting a really good athlete as well. And that's been a priority for Nebraska building this offensive line. You think back to guys like Grant Bricks in the 2024 class. Give me the phenomenal athletes. We'll get their bodies right. We'll get them right from a technique standpoint. I think Brian Tapu kind of falls in line in terms of, how Donovan Rhule and Matt Rhule want to build this offensive line. And you get into the film and say, it's one of the more impressive film studies for a three-star offensive lineman that you'll see. I mean, he's working at that right tackle spot right now. The first thing you look, and whether it's working up to the second level, whether it's getting on his down blocks, this kid just fires out of his stance and routinely moves bodies off the line of scrimmage. Right here, you're going to see just a kind of simple down block, but one you see so good out of his stance, playing with some low pads at times. Now, comes a little high at points. I mean, he's a road grader, but he gets out of that position and out of his stance exceptionally well. This rep, you're going to see him get to the second level. I mean, look at him move in space, go find a second level defender and just put him in the dirt. This kid has big time power in his hands as well. There's a lot to like in terms of what Brian Tapu brings to the table. And I'll say this, whoever this running back is on this high school team in Utah, kind of like what he brings to the table too, because there's some big time juice from the running back as well. But when you look at the right tackle position, just a wide variety of ways in terms of how he can impact this offensive line. I think he's a guy that you probably want to use the most in terms of letting him get downhill, get on those down blocks, and just move bodies off the line of scrimmage. But in pass pro, I mean, you can tell he's a functional athlete. And I think that's what excites you the most. Yeah, you need to work on some of that footwork, but I mean, give me the athletes. We'll teach them how to use their feet. It's a lot easier to teach a good athlete the fundamentals of playing offensive line than just these big bodies that aren't necessarily the most functional athletes. Telling you, this running back, some juice. This kid can absolutely cook as I was watching the film. But you look at Brian Tapu consistently just moving bodies off that right tackle spot. Probably a guy that's going to play right tackle at the collegiate level as well. Getting off the line of scrimmage. Again, sometimes plays high, but I love how he gets out of his stance. It's so rare to see these kind of offensive linemen get out of the stance like Brian Tapu does. Really good footwork and pass protection. You can tell those feet can absolutely move. A lot of boxes checked for a guy like Brian Tapu. Again, coming out, this is textbook, right? I mean, he's coming out low pads, out of his stance, moving bodies routinely off the line of scrimmage. maybe this running back's just looking better because he's running behind a right tackle that is consistently moving bodies off the line of scrimmage. I think this is a really intriguing get. And you look at this Nebraska class in 2025 and say, it's a lot of traits. We talked about Malcolm Simpson the other week, another just long, wiry defensive lineman that can move all along the defensive line. You continue to scroll down and say, Tyson Terry, multi-sport athlete that's an elite wrestler on the wrestling mat. These guys have the functional athletic traits that will allow you to be good football players. Are they necessarily the best football players junior year in high school? No, probably not. But you look at year 2, year 3, year 4 within this Nebraska program, that's what Matt Rhule is focusing on when he's recruiting these guys out of the high school level. He's not as concerned that, hey, well, how good of a football player are you right now as a 16, 17-year-old kid? How good can you be when you're 20, 21 years old? That's what Nebraska is focusing on the high school trail. And you can see the emphasis on that in terms of the commitments that they have in this 2025 class. Brian Tapu, the first offensive lineman to join this Nebraska 2025 class, certainly not going to be the last, but another just classic Matt Rhule prospect that you want to get into this program, get the body right, get the football player right, and you're looking at a very, very good football player in the Big Ten for this Nebraska program. We'll close it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate the Nebraska fans for always rocking with it. We'll talk to y'all later.